Next Step Communications from the Source brings you this urgent Source News Update. I'm Sherry Daniel. I'm the director of the Heaven Project and the founder of the Miracle School. Next Step Communications is sponsored by the Miracle School, which is a source-directed, miracle-based training program for spiritual activists. This Source News Update is a brief exploration of how to protect your link to life during the transition, the most massive universal change since the beginning of the creation. In the beginning of the creation, the design aspect of the Source, the Creator, created a holographic manifestation of itself, what is called the implementation aspect. It sent the implementation aspect into the manifest world to manifest the creation and to teach beings how to become stewards of the miracle of life in the creation. The design aspect that creates the source plan for life as heaven in the manifest world remained in the unmanifest level. The source plan was for the implementation aspect to remain in the manifest world for a finite number of incarnations and then return to its heaven in the unmanifest level. We have now reached the point in the history of the creation when the implementation aspect has begun the transition back to the unmanifest level. Since your source connection, which is your link to life, is a direct link between your suit, which is your body-mind, represented here by the blue sphere, and the implementation aspect, you will have to transition the technical aspects of your source connection during the stages of the transition in order to remain source connected when the implementation aspect departs for the unmanifest level. To understand the technical aspect, let's take a closer look at the nature of the source connection. The source connection is a love connection between a manifest being and the source. The manifest being connects to the entirety of the source through the implementation aspect, which is the only aspect of the source that a being can relate to directly. The design aspect does not have an interface with manifest beings. This connection is, at a technical level, a source-to-source connection between the onboard source intelligence in the suit, represented by the white circle, and the implementation aspect. If your suit did not have this onboard source intelligence, it could not connect directly to the implementation aspect of the source. The heaven that a being experiences in the manifest world is the result of the heaven that the source is experiencing, represented here by the white sphere, radiating through its connection to the onboard source intelligence and from the onboard source intelligence to the suit. Only a being who has developed love connection consciousness will be able to experience this gift of the heaven experience. It was to experience the heaven experience that the souls first petitioned the source to create a manifest world. The source-to-source connection is the miracle that enables a manifest being to experience a heaven in the manifest world that is something like the heaven that the source is experiencing in the unmanifest level. In order for the source to send to you life energies that give you the miracle of life and the miracles that enable life to be heaven, the onboard source intelligence works with the implementation aspect to establish a source support supply line. If your suit did not have an onboard source intelligence manning a supply line, it would not have life. It would be inert, lifeless. Since your source connection is both your link to life and your link to the heaven that your life was meant to be, your life depends on preserving your source connection during the stages of the transition and when the transition completes, which will happen when the implementation aspect departs for the unmanifest level. Now let's take a look at what will happen to your source connection when the implementation aspect leaves for the unmanifest level. When the implementation aspect leaves, it will send in an image of itself into the manifest world. Your onboard source intelligence will be able to connect to this image if your suit has attained at least an 80% source connection at the time the implementation aspect departs for the unmanifest level. The transition will look something like this. Soon after the implementation aspect departs, only those who have achieved 100% source connection will be able to continue to connect to the implementation aspect through the image. The image will be many times more immaterial than the current manifestation of the implementation aspect residing in the manifest world. Tuning to the source after the departure of the implementation aspect will be like trying to tune to a radio station in outer space. Only if you develop 100% source connection will the signal come in loud and clear, enabling you to continue on with strong source support, receiving all of the life energies and miracles that enable you to not only sustain your life, but have a chance to experience life as heaven. Now let's look at the 12 stages of the transition. There are 12 levels of the transition. Each level is subdivided into 12 sub-levels. The implementation aspect is now on level 3.11. Most beings were able to ascend with the implementation aspect from level 1 to level 3.11 with only the 6% source connection that most of them currently have. In the October 15th turning point, the first major turning point in the transition, the implementation aspect will shift to level 3.12. Although this may seem like a minor shift between sublevels, it is actually one of the most challenging shifts of the transition for reasons that I will describe later. As you can see, beings will need to strengthen their source connection to ascend with the implementation aspect through each of the successive levels of the transition. Those who do not ascend with the implementation aspect by strengthening their source connection will lose their source connection and with it their lives. The source connection is the link to life. When this link is broken, the suit begins to disintegrate on the spiritual level, which leads to the degeneration of the organic form. The end result is spiritual and physical death. No loss of life need occur if beings work to achieve 100% source connection and keep up with the ascension of the implementation aspect through the levels of the transition. In this source drawing, I'm depicting a being with their source connection, ascending with the implementation aspect through the 12 levels. Here the being is at a level 10, moving with the implementation aspect toward level 12. Here they arrive at level 11. And here they arrive at level 12, where the implementation aspect prepares to return to the design aspect of the source at the unmanifest level. The design aspect is represented by the white sphere to the right. As we saw in the earlier source drawing, the implementation aspect sends down an image of itself that is the continuing point of connection for manifest beings after it is returned to the unmanifest level. Now let's take a look at the upcoming October 15th turning point in the transition. In this turning point, the substratum of life, which provides the medium of life that is necessary to sustain the onboard source intelligence, will move with the implementation aspect from a level 3.11 to level 3.12. Up until this point, the substratum has remained throughout levels 1 through 3.11. This has enabled beings who did not ascend with the implementation aspect to level 3.11 to retain their source connection. Here you see the October 15th turning point with the substratum of life transition to level 3.12. Any being who wishes to survive will have to make it to level 3.12 to retain their place in the substratum of life. Any being who does not ascend will not be in the life-sustaining energies of the substratum. What this means is that their onboard source intelligence will have to leave immediately for the unmanifest level because it can't survive outside of the substratum of life. This will break the source connection. The supply line will disintegrate, eliminating the suit's ability to receive any life energies from the source. This will terminate the existence of the suit in the cycle of life. While the suit may continue to live for a limited time with whatever remaining reserves of life energies it might have, it will begin dematerializing. The soul will unlink from the suit, causing spiritual death, and physical death will be inevitable. Unlike ordinary physical death, when the organic suit remains in the cycle of life as the organic body decomposes, and the energy suit lives on to prepare for another lifetime, when the onboard source intelligence is gone, the suit is not a part of life and will eventually dematerialize, leaving no trace behind on the spiritual or physical levels. This ends the chance of a being to have eternal life in the manifest world. Needless to say, the stakes are high, and adequate preparation is needed to enable the suit to stay source-connected so it can ascend to level 3.12 and remain in the substratum of life, which from that point onwards will move up with the implementation aspect with each successive level shift of the transition. Now let's talk about what endangers the suit so that it could fail to ascend when the implementation aspect ascends. As I've mentioned earlier, the source connection is essentially a source-to-source connection between the onboard source intelligence and the implementation aspect of the source that sustains the miracle of the suit, which is represented here by the orange and pink sphere. When the implementation aspect returns to the unmanifest level, one half of the source-to-source connection will exist outside of the manifest world. If a being has not released from his attachments to the beings and possessions that he desires, then these attachments will pull him out of alignment with the source-to-source connection that sustains his life. This is what will prevent him from ascending with the implementation aspect and sustaining his life. In the end, he and everyone and everything attached to him will disintegrate, experiencing ultimate and final spiritual and physical death. Only those who attain 100% source connection will retain their lives in the manifest world after the transition. The bottom line is that if you lose your source connection, your link to life, you lose your life. Your suit doesn't know what its source connection is and why it should protect it. You have to parent your suit just as adults parented you when you were a child by teaching you not to step out in front of oncoming traffic. If you don't educate yourself and give your suit the technical education that it needs to have to survive, then your suit could lose its source connection, and you and your suit will no longer be able to live in the manifest world. I have prepared an extensive, gifted video book training that will provide the miracle-based training that you and your suit will need to have to know how to survive the transition. You can access this video along with specific information about how to prepare for the October 15th turning point at www.themiracleschool.net/SCP. I urge you to take action, as each shift in the transition can be critical to retaining your source connection. While the major turning points are high-risk points for most beings, your source connection could be on the line with a shift between two sublevels that most other suits can weather without incident. To help you to know the current state of your source connection and what steps you individually need to take to prepare for the next stage of the transition, you can request a gifted source connection assessment at www.themiracleschool.net/SCP. The transition of the implementation aspect back to the unmanifest level is a natural transition. If you prepare correctly, it will be a transition that ushers in a new era, which ends the suffering caused by the disconnection and enables you to experience the heaven that your life and all of life was meant to be.